Hi, welcome to today's video. My name is Paul. So spring is finally here, sort of thing. The last few days here have been quite warm, and some of the leaves on the trees are starting to open. Some of the buds are starting to open, and you always get that new leaf, the sort of vivid green of the new leaf that I associate with early spring. So anyway, it kind of inspired me to go back to the kind of color palette that I used last year. Very simple color palette, the cadmium yellow plus, in this case, 3 blues. So there's a French ultramarine blue, a cobalt blue, and then the darker Prussian blue. And that's it, it's just those 4 colors. Of course, because I'm doing a lot of wet painting, you're going to get mixing happening on the paper. So you're going to get the blues and yellows mixing and giving different greens. Now last week's video I sort of went through what I was doing and why I was doing it, or trying to explain that. I don't want to keep doing that every video, so this week instead we're going to watch me doing a painting, but I wanted to focus on using photographs as references. And some of the problems, well, specifically 2 problems that I think can occur if you use a lot of photographic references, especially if you're getting started with landscape painting. Not just in watercolor, but really any medium. So I wouldn't say, there's some people on YouTube say you should never use photographs as references. I wouldn't go as far as that. I think maybe what their reason for saying that is, if you're more at the sort of naturalistic, realistic end of the spectrum, you want to create something that looks realistic, very realistic. The problem with using photographs is the camera can introduce some distortions in color, distortions in values, and of course also distortions sometimes in perspective, depending on the type of lens that's used. But I'm not getting into all that because I'm not really into that sort of super realism type of painting. But if you are, it's something to be aware of if you're using photographs. What I'm interested more in is the idea of composition. So I keep going on about this idea of composition, but I really do think of all the different sort of aspects of art, composition in the early days is something that's really important to try and get our heads around what it means and how we can use it to create better paintings. So I never use, or pretty much never use, photographic references. And part of that is because I'm really interested in painting from memory, because I'm fascinated with the whole idea of memory and how memory kind of defines who we are and how we look at the world. It plays a very important role in each of us and how we are and how we look at things. So it's something that I like to sort of explore with my own art. But we're not going to get into all that sort of philosophical stuff today. Instead, just 2 problems that can occur if you're using a lot of photographic references. So the first one, I think, as I said, is to do with composition. If you're using someone else's photographs and you're just sort of slavishly copying what's in the photograph, you're not really thinking about the composition. You're not questioning the composition, changing it in any way. You're just accepting whatever the photographer captured in their photograph. And the problem with that is when you're learning and trying to improve, if you're not actively thinking about a particular topic, you're not really going to learn or improve in that area. So rather than, if you do want to use photographic references, that's of course fine, but maybe I would suggest don't just copy what you see in the photograph, but question the composition and think about can you change the composition and make it better in some way? And one of the things you can do, whether you're painting from imagination or painting from some sort of reference, or even out in nature and, you know, drawing and painting outdoors, one of the things you can do is to draw little thumbnail sketches and try playing around with the composition, maybe moving some trees around, taking trees out of the composition, putting some in, just trying different things, mixing things up a bit. And when you're doing that at either a conscious or even a subconscious level, you're experimenting with composition and you're thinking about composition, and you're going to learn more about what works for you in terms of what you like in terms of the composition. The second thing I was going to say was, sometimes when people use photographs, especially sort of beginner, lower intermediate sort of level of painting, I think people get caught up in all of the details, the small things. And again, this ties back to composition, but you have to learn to look at the landscape in terms of the big shapes, the big masses, because those are the things that you're going, mostly those are the things you're going to move around and change and work on the composition that way. So for example, what I mean is, maybe where is your horizon line going to go? Are you going to have just a little bit of sky? Are you going to include lots of sky? Is it going to be more like a 50-50 balance between the land and the sky? All of these, you know, the big shapes, just thinking about the sky and the land, not the little details, and where you're putting things in. Again, that's all about composition, and it's going to really seriously affect the final result of your painting. So as I say, some people, when they get photographs, they immediately look at all the little details in the photographs and they start thinking, how do I include all of these leaves on the trees and things like that? I would suggest be careful of that and don't do that, and look instead at the bigger shapes. Okay, well, this is a scan of the final painting. Again, am I happy with it 100%? No. It's all part of a learning process, and there's things in there that I wouldn't do again, but sometimes, you know, you have to learn through mistakes. Anyway, I hope this video was useful to somebody. I say it's just my ideas. If you made it this far in the video, thank you for watching, and hopefully see you in the next one.